Have you ever wondered why we're even here? I mean, when you think about certain things, that's ultimately the question, really, in life. Why this? Why that? Why the other? Why is probably the best question that we could ever ask. You see, why indicates that there's a self awareness and a need to comprehend whatever the question why is related to. Now, today on Sozo 52, we are going to investigate why we are here. In Genesis 1:1, we read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Initially, we see that just cracking open the Bible and reading the very first sentence, it creates within us a multitude of questions. Well, what is meant by the beginning? Who is God? What does it mean that God created? Why is there a God? Wait, you mean there's a heaven? And you're saying to me that God created the earth? When we ask these questions, or when we consider the why we are here, it's best to begin at the beginning. So let's just start there. What is the beginning of us as our humans and as humans? And let me suggest that, or propose that, if we look at that, within it we might find our purpose. You see, we do not know really for an absolute certain of when the first time a human being was conceptualized, but we can propose a theory. The theory I would like to propose is that it occurred in reference to an event that occurred a long time ago, and to pretty much every degree is currently occurring as we speak. The event I want to refer to is a war in heaven. Now, if we go to the Bible in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 7, we will read, then war broke out in heaven. Now, for now, we're going to just define heaven as the place where God dwells. But what was this war? What's this war in heaven? Because that just sort of blows your mind, doesn't it? Isn't heaven supposed to be full of happiness, joy, prosperity, no pain, no tears, etc., etc.? Well, Revelation 12:7 says that Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. Now, this war in heaven was a war that was fought between two groups of angels. And for now, we will assume one set of angels were siding with God or loyal to God, and the other side we're going to assume were disloyal to God. There were two leaders in these angel armies that were squaring off against each other. One leader was named Michael, and the other is given a nickname, the dragon. Now, somewhere in the process of this conflict, God creates the earth. I know. The next verse in Revelation 12, verse 8 says, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. And so there it is. Satan is hurled to a location that Revelation identifies as the earth. And not only was Satan cast into the earth at this time, but his angels were cast with him. And so now we discover also that this dragon who was waging war with Michael and his angels has a name, and the name given here is Satan. Satan and his angels were not able to defeat the angels of heaven that were led by Michael, and were cast out of heaven to the earth. Satan was cast down, and his angels were cast with him. And so the battle was won by Michael, and Satan with his angels, the fallen angels, were cast down to earth. Now, when Satan was cast down the earth with his angels, he was essentially exiled from heaven. While Satan was on earth, those angels who battled against him and were loyal to God could do nothing more than to prevent Satan from bringing his angels back to heaven and continuing the conflict. There is evidence in the scripture that they were not authorized to destroy Satan and his angels, but rather to imprison them and to keep them from spreading their rebellion across the known universe. But God had to do something. God could not just destroy Satan because that would look arbitrary and unjust. After all, this rebellion in heaven was significant enough that some of the other angels chose to rebel with Satan. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 4, we read, how many angels rebelled with Satan? His tail, it says, drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. So God has to render a judgment concerning a full third of his previously loyal angels and Satan. He could not just destroy them because that would appear tyrannical. A trial then with evidence would have to proceed. Evidence that is presented, witnesses that are brought forth, and a verdict being rendered by the remaining 2/3 of the angels still loyal to God. And only in that fashion would the character of God be satisfied. And the issue that started this war in the first place could be resolved. Revelation 20 tells us what happens next. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him. And so let me just recap. There's war in heaven. Satan and his angels lose the war. The angels and Michael cast Satan and his angels down to earth, exiling them to earth. And then we see an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he lays hold of Satan, who happens to be on the earth, and binds him. And so Satan is bound in the abyss. It is the formless void in scripture that is called earth. The rebel is captured and bound, yet the angels who followed Satan are still with him, and there is no indication anywhere in scriptures that they are bound, that they are chained, or that they are imprisoned with him, yet they are left here upon the earth. They are held in this formless abyss of the earth, and then this occurs according to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2. Notice the description of the earth. The earth was without form and void. It was an abyss, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. The Spirit of God surrounded the earth above the waters and then began to make something of this formless void where Satan and his angels were imprisoned. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light and saw that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and he called the darkness night. And so the evening and the morning were the first day. So at this moment, God lights the sun, and he sets the earth in a course around it. Then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And so the evening and the morning were the second day. And so on the second day of creation, God created the atmosphere of the earth. And so if you're keeping track at this point, we now have light from the sun, and we have oxygen upon the earth. And then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of all these waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And so God caused the waters that were previously covering this material, the solid earth materials, the core, the mantle, and etc. He caused the waters to move, and perhaps he raised portions of the earth and etc. But this moving and raising resulted in the exposing of land. And now this is how there are oceans and continents. Then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the earth that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And so the evening and the morning were the third day. So on the third day of creation, God created vegetation. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the night from the day, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And so the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So on the fourth day of creation week, God established the moon, set it in its course with the earth around the sun, thereby establishing tides, now that we have oceans, establishing seasons of the earth in its course around the sun. And so now earth has a cycle of seasons, the oceans have a cycle of tides, and etc. Then God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heaven. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So on the fifth day, God populated the oceans. God populated the skies. God populated the ponds and the lakes, thriving with living creatures. And then God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw it was good. In short, on this day, God populated the earth with living creatures. Now, somewhere in this process, God surely had thought about it in his plan. I'd be surprised if he hadn't. And I'm sure some of the unfallen angels might have even asked, in how to deal with the rebellion in heaven. Surely the question was asked. I mean, it could have been asked somewhere previous to the entire creation process. It might have been asked somewhere through the course of the creation process between days 1 and 5, or at least near the end of day 5. Surely someone asked the question, because here in Genesis 1:26, we see God stating, then God said, let us make mankind in our image. You see, surely someone would have thought, in all of this process, bringing to form in this, what was previously a formless prison where Satan is bound and his angels are roaming freely, someone surely stopped and asked, what if there were a rebellion on earth? What if these rebellious angels are able to convince mankind to rebel? And so somewhere, sometime, a plan was surely devised somewhere in the course of this process to handle the notion that if during this trial of Satan and his angels, if mankind was to rebel, what would happen? Well, believe it or not, this actually took place. It's Revelation chapter 13, and it's identified in part in verse 8. And it says this: all who dwell on the earth will worship him, referring to Satan, whose names have not been written in the book of life. The book of life is being referred to as being of the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so there is a lamb that during the course of this creation, or something identified as the lamb during the course of the foundation creation of the earth, that is established, I believe, for the purpose that if mankind rebels, someone or something known as the lamb or a lamb will be slain. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. And to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. Then God saw something that he had made. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And so the evening and the morning were the sixth day. And then one final step in the creation process, the seventh day of the creation week. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 1 says, thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. And then God blessed this seventh day, and he sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. So God has created the earth in a week. Now, there are three very distinct things set forth in Creation Week, identified within the context of the creation story. God commanded all of his living creation to be fruitful and multiply. With this command, he demonstrated that he has given them all that is within the earth to enable them to do so. All the herbs, all the fruits, everything on the planet is used to support the be fruitful and multiply command of both the fish of the sea, the cows of the creatures of the land, and the birds of the air. And this is also including mankind. Number two, God gave mankind dominion over the planet and all of its life. And number three, God blessed the seventh day of creation, making it sanctified. And so within the context of Creation Week and the subsequent commands that are given or implied within, we find these themes. Relationship. How do we relate with one another in terms of reproduction, in terms of life, in terms of how we relate to nature? How do we relate to anything really that we observe on this planet? Authority. Who has power over whom? You see, it's one thing to give dominion to one person, but how do two people share dominion over a planet? Keeping in mind that both of these individuals, Adam and Eve, are sharing the planet together. So how is dominion exercised over one another? Dominion is a pretty big deal. Dominion over plant life, dominion over insect life, dominion over the ocean life, dominion over the air life, dominion over the land life. How do we relate to that? How do we exercise authority? The relationship concept, relationship between the creator and what he has created, the relationship that mankind has to God. When God sanctified the seventh day, it means he set it apart as holy. Well, how are men supposed to relate to God as holy? The seventh day was brought to bring that about. You see, these three themes form the basis of an emerging law that we can call God's law. It is within these constraints found in Creation Week that Satan and his angels will be judged. It is within these constraints set forth on Creation Week that the unfallen angels can witness how this trial will pan out. This is essentially the setting of the stage of the witness action of the prosecution of Satan and his angels. And how is all this going to be brought to pass? How does this relate to your and my purpose as created beings on this planet? 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 3 says, well, don't you know that we shall judge angels? We are here on the earth because of war in heaven. What we do here on earth is an element of the process of the universe determining what God should do with Satan and his angels as a means of concluding what started that war in the first place. We are here to serve as examples to the angels who witness our life and activity. In short, we are here to bring to witness the very character of God.